to Urban Forum Northwest. No, I am not Eddie Rye. I'm Kevin Henry, sitting in for Eddie Rye. And I want to remind you that Urban Forum Northwest is brought to you by the Sound Transit's Diversity Program Office, the Port of Seattle's Office of Social Responsibility, and the Washington State chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors. So we have a great show for you today. We have in studio Elizabeth Younger, who's going to be talking to us about the Women of Color Empowered event, honoring 8 different women right here in Bellevue coming up in May. And we also have on the line Kanoko Noborakawa, who's going to be talking about the 9th Annual Seattle Race Conference. We'll be with her in just a minute. And then we also have Joy Stevens, who's going to be talking about Sickle Cell Day and also talking about that disease and how people are fundraising in order to fight that disease, as well as she'll be giving us a list of really interesting workshops that a lot of business people will want to be involved in and participate and attend. So first, let's go right to Kanoko. Welcome to Urban Forum Northwest.
Thank you very much, Kevin, but I need to have a little bit of correction out there. I'm not talking about the Seattle Race Conference, which is in its 9th year, and it will be coming up on, I believe it's May 12th.
You're talking about the North Puget Sound Conference on race. I'm sorry. Wrong sheet I was reading. Well, you can talk about the other conference, too, if you'd like.
I'm going to talk about it a little because they were our inspiration.
Okay.
We had a number of us up here in Snohomish County had gone to the Seattle Race Conference for a number of years, and it was when the Communities of Color Coalition had our first retreat in 2005, right after we incorporated. One of our 5-year, well, actually, it was our long-range goal. It was either a 5 or 10-year goal. I can't remember which one. We said we'd like to have a race conference up here in Snohomish County. And what we're looking at was we wanted to have something like Seattle was having down, that happens down in Seattle, because we felt there were very important issues that needed to be addressed up in Snohomish County. And when we'd go to Seattle for those conferences, we saw very few people from Snohomish County. And we felt if we brought it up here to Snohomish County, that would make it more easy for people in Snohomish County who were curious about what's all this talk about race and why do we need to talk about race, to have a place to go and meet with other people from Snohomish County and talk about those issues.
Well, I think that was very well put. And you mentioned that there are some issues up in Snohomish County, and some people, who don't live in Snohomish County might not think there are any issues up there. So maybe you could just kind of elaborate a little bit on some of the issues that are affecting the people up there.
Well, it's similar to a lot of other areas. When you look at who's representing you in government, what are the faces looking at you across the counter when you go in to submit your permit applications? Who are your law enforcement officers there, or your first responders? You see that people of color are not represented within those organizations as they are within the community, and sometimes that creates barriers. There's less trust in some cases, or there may be language barriers as well that are created when your force that is supposed to be providing services to the community does not look like your community. You can't be as effective in providing those services.
Right. And I have heard some groups say that, we realize we're not diverse, or we realize that we need to reflect our community. However, we have a devil of a time recruiting people or getting people on boards and commissions or even hiring people. Is that something that you find to be true, or are they just not going about it the right way?
We feel that they're not going about it the right way. It's true that you don't see a lot of diversity in commissions, but when or within the employment arena, but when we start looking at what are people doing, where are they going, how are they getting the word out? It's like, well, they're going to the same places that they always went before, and that thing about crazy making, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to change, that's what they were doing. And so when they find out that when they go to other, look at other ways to get in touch with people who they're trying to get a hold of for their different positions that are open. For example, if you have an engineering position that's open and they only advertise it through your regular means through newspapers and things, you may not get it. But if you specifically go to some of the professional organizations that work with engineers, for example, there's a Black engineers organization, there's a Hispanic engineers organization. If you go to those types of organizations, ask them to put your job announcements out on their job boards, then you are more likely to get people from diverse backgrounds than if you just go about it the same way that you've always done it before.
Well, and it also brings up a question about social media, because I love social media. I mean, I think it's a wonderful tool. However, at the same time, it also doesn't replace eye to eye, sit down and let's build a relationship, that kind of situation. So how do you balance the two? The
use of social media and face-to-face?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking that a lot of times I've known nonprofits who will say, well, look, we have an ad, or we're trying to reach diverse communities, and we sent out a bunch of emails, or we posted it on our Facebook, or we tweeted about it, and nobody responded. And I'm just saying that it seems like there's a balance between that and actually getting to know people on a more personal level.
Yes, there is a balance between the two, and but the problem that we see a lot of times is the people that are going out to the job fairs, that are going into different communities to try and make those contacts, are not people who connect with the community. It's most often a white person who doesn't have a connection to that community that's going out to that community, trying to get people to talk to them, trying to make people feel comfortable coming to work for an organization that has very few or maybe no people of that particular background working for it. So it's very difficult when you do that, when you send someone who has no connection to the community to try and recruit. So a lot of times we have people coming to us saying, will you help us recruit? And we're like, well, tell us what you can offer that will make whichever group of people you're trying to increase your numbers in feel comfortable being at your organization. What is your organization's commitment to inclusion? What types of things do you have in place already that will make someone from a different background coming in feel comfortable, feel supported, and do you have a mentoring system so that they can have someone that will help them along the way to understand some of the things that may be happening in that organization that they're not used to. For example, so my own experience here is I am from Hawaii, which is very different in terms of the way people interact around the issues of race and ethnicity.
And which island, by the way?
From Oahu.
Okay.
And so when I first came up here, and I'm a little bit different in the fact that I came up here for school, so I had a number of years before I got into the workforce that I could work some things out. But when I was first here, there were some really confusing things going on that I didn't understand. I had to ask people. And because I was in a school situation, I knew that I could ask a lot of questions and get some answers. But if I was in a work situation, I might not have been as likely to ask those questions, because I would be wondering if my employers would be wondering about me because I'm asking these questions because I don't understand some of the things that are going on. So, those are the types of things that the employers have to be aware of. And we're hoping that through our conference and the speakers that we have, that people will get some of those, some background there on what they can do. And right now, this year, it's rather small because this is our first year. We're nowhere near as large or have as many speakers as the Seattle Race Conference will have. But we think that the number of things that we have going on will address a number of the needs of some of the people here in Snohomish County who have questions about this issue of race.
Well, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm noticing from the release here that you have workshops and breakout sessions like Racism 101, how to put cultural competency to work in emergency response. So maybe talk a little bit about the speakers and what's going to be happening, because it's an all-day thing. And by the way, it's the North Puget Sound Conference on Race, partnering for social justice, and it's free. It is sold out, but we want to talk about how this is put together, because hopefully it'll just be kind of an annual thing forever and ever.
Yes, that's our hope.
All right.
So what we've done is, we're starting out talking about Racism 101, and we have an icebreaker as well. And both those two things together right at the beginning of the conference is going to kind of set the tone for the conference. We chose Racism 101 as one of the first pieces so that people would all be talking the same language, because as you know, with a lot of the work that you've done, that when you say racism, people are all over the board with what they mean by what is racism and who can be a, quote, racist. And so we want to just put that on the table, the very first thing, try and get people to wrap their heads around, here's what you're going to be hearing throughout this day, here's what these terms mean. So if you've got other ideas of what this term means, put those aside for just this day, listen to it from this viewpoint. And then open your mind to this viewpoint of what this word means and how it's being used today. And then our icebreaker, we're going to be talking. We're going to have people go through an exercise where they will be having to think more about white privilege and whether they have it or not. And basically raising their consciousness about what white privilege is, and how for the white people in the room, how they may have benefited from white privilege, even though one of the things we hear a lot is our family never owned slaves. I don't own any slaves. Why am I a part of the problem? So we want to raise people's consciousness of these things that have happened over the years, well before they were born, and how it impacts us today, and what types of benefits they have from those things that happened historically.
Well, I think with something like white privilege, too, a lot of times you don't realize the unconscious things that are happening in your favor until they're pointed out. So bravo for doing something like that. Is that something where you feel people will go in and they'll come out and feel like they're headed in the right direction? And I say that because sometimes I get the impression the work that I do in Bellevue is that people want kind of a check-the-box kind of situation where, okay, I did the 1-hour workshop, or I did the 45-minute, facilitated discussion, now I'm done for the year. But as we both know, it's an ongoing kind of lifelong kind of journey that you're on with this.
Even for people like you and I who've worked in it, it is a lifelong journey. There's always different things, new things you can learn. There's always, and especially in this global age, there are always people coming in from different areas of the world that you don't know about. And so you have to learn. You have to be open to learning every single day about things around you.
Well, I think we are
going to be stressing that.
Well, I think we also have to. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, I also think we have to understand how we're influenced, our perceptions by the media, about how we grew up, and all kinds of other factors that we might not be even aware of. Yes, very much so. And again, coming from Hawaii, like I said, I had a very different upbringing. When I get into conversations here about certain types of things, I have to stop myself from saying certain things, because I'm automatically going into this thing about, oh yeah, people have the opportunity. I'm like, wait a minute, I had the opportunity. These people didn't have the opportunity because they were raised in such a different social atmosphere than I was raised in. So I have to check my previous experiences at the door and not come from that viewpoint, because it is not the same viewpoint as a lot of the people that I'm talking with. Okay, and we are talking about once again, the North Puget Sound Conference on Race, Partnering for Social Justice, which is happening on Saturday, April 28th at the Edmonds Community College at Woodway Hall. And we're speaking with Kanuko Norbakawa, and she is with the Communities of Color Coalition, and you've been with the group for, about 5 or 6 years now?
Well, the group was officially incorporated in 2005, but we had been, as community leaders, just talking about things since 2000, and then just trying to do things, as disparate individuals when we came together in 2005. So we've been around for, as an organization, about 7 years. About 7
years. And so if people wanted more information about your organization, there might be some people listening that live up in Snohomish County and say, hey, I didn't even know that organization was around. And so who would they contact?
We do Yeah, we do pretty much our work is limited to Snohomish County because you guys down in Seattle have a lot of people doing a lot of work, a lot of good organizations down there. Up in Snohomish County, there's not that much. And the way that they can find out more about us is, we have a Facebook page. So you can go onto Facebook if you're there. Like us on Facebook, Communities of Color Coalition. We used to have a website, but it is down. It's broken. If you're
broken and
any
down,
of your listeners want to help us, it's broken. It's because I do it, and I'm not a tech geek. I just dabble with it. Our email is info@c3coalition.org, and we have a voicemail number at which is 425-258-8828.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on Urban Forum Northwest here at 1150 AM KKNW. You have a great day, and let's stay in touch.
Okay. Thanks very much.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, and that was the conversation about the North Puget Sound Conference on Race, Partnering for Social Justice. I'm Kevin Henry. I'm sitting in for Eddie Rye here at Urban Forum Northwest on KKNW 1150. And we want to go over to, sitting to my left, Elizabeth Younger, and she is going to tell us all about the Women of Color Empowerment Luncheon, or Empowered Luncheon. Is that correct? Empowered or Empowerment Luncheon.
Well, we have on the brochure Women of Color Empowered.
Okay.
So given power.
Okay, there are going to be a lot of empowered women there, and this is happening when?
This is a luncheon which will be May 11 at the Westin Bellevue Hotel from 11:30 until 1:30. So just 2 hours on May 11, which is a Friday. And we're going to be honoring 8 very powerful women.
And who might they be?
Well, the title of this luncheon is Today's Leaders Paving the Way for the Future. And I think you might recognize the names of some of these women, but maybe not all. For instance, we have Gail Tarleton, who now is president of the Port of Seattle Commission, the 5 commissions that are there. And we have Dr. Anna Cauche, who is provost of the University of Washington. Martha Cho, who is at the moment the chief administrative officer of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Do you know all of those so far?
I know 2 of them.
Yes.
Keep going.
Okay. Then Gloria Northcroft, who with her husband has a foundation.
George. I know Gloria and George.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Do I win a prize?
I think he will be at the luncheon, and I think you will be too.
I will be there.
I got my ticket.
I got my ticket already, yeah.
Yes. Well, Gloria is a life sciences consultant and worked with Genentech for many years. She's retired from that company now. And we have Trish Carpenter, who is president of Bellevue LifeSpring.
I
think you know her.
I know her.
And then we have Linda Pillow, who is chief of the Bellevue Police.
I definitely know her.
I hope under positive circumstances.
I know her and like her.
Good. You better say that. And then I need to mention Marie Zacuz, who has been on the board of directors for the Tulalip Indian tribes for 22 years. So she has really done a lot of work. And then Anu Jain, who is vice president of the Intellius Corporation.
Intellius, I think.
Intellius, yeah.
That sounds good.
Intellius.
Intellius.
Yes. And she also is on the board, I think, with Trish Carpenter, too. I think they are working together. And
so did we leave anybody out?
I think we've got everybody. But I also want to mention that the Mistress of Ceremonies is going to be Betty Noakes, who is president of the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce.
I know her.
Aha!
There's only 2 people I think I missed on that list there.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is there's a lot of luncheons and a lot of events and people being honored and things like that throughout the year. However, this is the first time that this particular group, which is, I guess, headed by the Northwest Asian Weekly as one of the main sponsors, has come to the East Side.
Right. Yes, the Northwest Asian Weekly newspaper is the sponsoring agency, is the main initiator and the main force behind these luncheons. And we've been doing this for quite a few years. We've had 3 luncheons a year, but we usually have them over at the China Harbor restaurant at Lake Union or at the New Hong Kong restaurant in the International District. And this is the first time that we've come over to Bellevue to have a luncheon. So that's something that's new for us.
And that's great. And my question, another question I have, has to do with these women are being honored. So when the people who are coming, why should people come, and what do you hope that they kind of take away from this? Because, I mean, I think that just like a lot of people of color and immigrants and women, there's a lot of people in our society that are quite often overlooked. So are you hoping that people will want to create their own system of honoring other women or other conferences, or would you like to see this to be a regular thing every year in Bellevue, or what? I guess I'm talking about your vision for the future.
Well, I think for the most part, when we pick out, and it's a challenge to pick out the people to be honored. We have a planning committee that mulls over all of the people they know.
They mull.
And then we choose the women that we feel would be most outstanding, and women who are high in their own fields, but also have made a contribution to the community. So each of these women have really done something else besides their position. And
what would be a typical example of a
Well, we might think about Gloria Northcroft, who has worked also with the Children's Hospital. And I know that Gloria Cho has done a lot of community activities, especially with children.
Well, and Trish Carpenter, I believe, was with the Overlake Service League.
I think that was the previous name for Bellevue LifeSpring.
And she's done a lot of work over the years with needy families. So I'm trying to get an idea of...
So these are kind of role models. And we might say mentors, people who we would love to emulate if possible. And so we have a series of questions which we ask at each luncheon. And on this occasion, I think the honorees will be sitting on the stage with Betty Noakes, and she has 4 questions that she's going to ask. And then each woman in turn will answer, just, 3 or 4 minutes answer, telling about what's important to them, how they handle changes, how they deal with events that come up in their life and work, and other questions that are connected with kind of how did you get there and how did you become so powerful, because this is Women of Power. And I think the audience is there to hear what each one of them has to say. How did you do it? And what will you do in your future? I think one of the questions had to do with how will you follow your passion even though you've kind of reached the top of your career. How will you still continue to grow? So I think the audience wants to come, and I think a lot of the audience are friends and relatives of and husbands and wives.
Well, and that's great, but I also think that the fact that it's coming to Bellevue and coming to the east side is very important, because a lot of times people, when they think about Bellevue, they don't necessarily associate that with diversity and with these kinds of events. So I'm kudos to you and Assunta and the Northwest Asian Weekly and all your committee members. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is people come to an event and they go, wow, this is a really nice event. Everything went very smoothly, but they don't realize the hours and months and even years sometimes that go into planning something like this. So maybe you could just briefly walk us through what is it like to put together a conference like this in case other nonprofits or businesses are thinking about doing the same thing.
Yes, it's kind of a long and somewhat arduous process in a way to have a 2-hour event on a particular day. As I mentioned, we usually have 3 luncheons a year. So the minute one is finished, we're getting ready for the next one. And so I think it was even last Christmas when I spoke to my daughter-in-law's uncle.
Your daughter-in-law's uncle.
Yeah, who
What's
works
his
for...
name?
Well, I don't know whether I should mention his name.
No, don't mention his name. Never mind.
He's on the Seattle
I'm just looking
Port
for details.
Police.
Never mind.
But he was the one who gave me Gail Tarleton's name, just right at the beginning, because he works with her. And so I thought, yes, fabulous. And I did know her from some other situations, too. So the first step really is to think about who will we honor, who do we want to recognize, and we want to have diversity. As you can see from this list of people that I've mentioned, we have a person who has come from Cuba, and she's provost at the University of Washington now, and someone who has an Asian background, someone who has the Native American background.
African-American, Caucasian.
And I think that Anu Jane has an Indian background. I'm not positive because I haven't heard her speak yet. And then we try to get as wide a diversity as possible for the women on the luncheon, so everyone will feel they have kind of a representative too. So we have to choose the people in the first place. And then Asanta Eng, who is publisher of the Northwest Asian Weekly, is the one who kind of sets the schedule. And she has, in mind the subjects. She's working way ahead. So we have the 3 luncheons each year. She has the subject organized. She chooses from the planning committee who will be the chair women for each luncheon. She said to me last year, which one do you want to do?
So just in the next minute, so you've kind of described the initial concept and then the initial things that have to happen to get things started. So what are some of the key things that just have to happen to make sure that this is a success, or one of your luncheons typically is a success?
Well, we do have to have the venue, because I mentioned that this will be at the Bellevue Westin Hotel, and this will be May 11. And Asanta and the man who's in charge of programs there, whose name is Dash.
I know him, too.
Oh, yes, wonderful. Dash is a fabulous organizer. And so we've been working closely with him. So we have to have a venue. And then we also want to think about sponsors, the corporate sponsors. And this time we do have State Farm, Intellius, Nordstrom, Port of Seattle, and the Kemper and Betty Freeman Foundation, who will be our sponsors thus far.
So sponsors, getting people who are organized, people like Dash are very well respected in the community. And I think when you have people on your team that are very well respected, they tend to draw people to them. And they can solicit support and get it because of they're held in high esteem in the community. So I think that those are some of the important ingredients to putting something like this on. Because what we want to do in the course of doing a show like this is really encourage other entities, organizations, nonprofits, businesses to kind of follow suit. So unfortunately, we have to kind of wrap this up, but I want to get some information from you on how people can get tickets.
Yes, I do have a telephone number for getting tickets, which is 206-223-0623. That's the phone number for the Northwest Asian Weekly newspaper.
And you have to repeat that again.
Telephone number 206-223-0623, or their email, rsvp@nwasianweekly.com.
Okay. And this is, what's the day again? May 11th.
Friday, May 11, less than a month now.
From 11:30 to 1:30.
Right. And people will arrive around 11:30, and then they'll begin the panel discussion at 12.
But it's a luncheon, right?
It is a luncheon.
So that means they get food, right?
Yes.
I would assume. It's not
Positively.
like bring your own. It's not a potluck.
No.
Okay, so you get a luncheon, and the tickets are $50, correct?
Right, yes. Okay. A very nice luncheon is served at the Westin. And then there'll be a little bit of mingling before the panel discussion, and then, maybe after, so that the women being honored can talk with the audience also, as well as doing their presentations up on the stage.
Okay.
So there should be opportunity for socializing with everyone else in the... Yes. I really see it as a good networking experience.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll be there, and I'll see you there,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Elizabeth Younger, for telling us about the luncheon, a wonderful event. That's the Women of Color Empowered Luncheon at the Westin in Bellevue on May 11th from 11:30 to 1:30. We've been visiting with Elizabeth Younger, part of the planning committee, and you are listening to the Urban Forum Northwest. I am not Eddie Rye. I'm Kevin Henry sitting in for Eddie Rye. This is 1150 KKNW. We'll be right back after these important messages.
Small businesses help sustain our region's economy. That's why the Port of Seattle provides equal access and opportunity to all small businesses owned and operated by minorities, women, and the disabled. To provide professional or personal services or contract for small works projects, you should register on both the Port's Consultants roster and Small Works roster. You can also make Port buyers aware of your products and services by registering on the Small Business roster. It's free and easy. For more information, just go to portseattle.org and look for the links under business. That's portseattle.org. The Port of Seattle, where a sustainable world is headed.
You, sir, are a constant complainer.
Not another radio commercial.
Especially when it comes to driving to work.
Only thing worse than today's traffic was yesterday's.
Yet as much as you complain, traffic will never get any better.
I'm a hamster caught in a wheel inside a circle within a maze.
Meet the voice of reason.
I'm the voice of reason, sweetie.
Well, I'm the voice of, hey, knucklehead, quit driving 40 in the passing lane.
Ride Sound Transit and you can kick back and relax on your way to work.
What would I complain about then?
How about the weather?
This winter was a rainstorm locked in a shower inside a downpour trapped in a freezer.
Listen to the voice of reason.
Hello, sunshine.
Ride Sound Transit and save. For details, visit soundtransit.org. Sound Transit. Ride the wave.
Looking for fare and scheduling information? Listen to the Voice of Reason and visit our new website and trip planner at soundtransit.org.
Some people know a good thing when they hear it. Alternative Talk, 1150 AM.
And welcome back to Urban Forum Northwest here at 1150 KKNW. I'm your host, Kevin Henry, sitting in for Eddie Rye, who's on assignment. I always wanted to say that. I don't know if he's on assignment, but it sounds cool. So on the phone, we have Joy Stevens, who is the president of Ode to Joy Consulting, a firm here in Bellevue. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin.
And the reason why we wanted to talk is, well, actually for several reasons. You are always very adept at putting together a lot of business workshops for professionals and especially nonprofits in terms of training them to be more effective in the areas of outreach and financial planning and business planning, that kind of thing. But you're also part of an organization that is putting a spotlight on sickle cell anemia, which is, I remember sickle cell back when I was in high school, which I won't mention how long ago that was. But it's one of those diseases or health issues that seems to get buried very often and almost forgotten about. So I wanted to talk to you about, you had mentioned something to me about Sickle Cell Day on June the 19th, I believe.
That's correct.
And a fundraiser that you're putting together on June the 16th, I believe.
That's right.
So tell us all about it.
Well, certainly I'd be happy to, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share the news with your listeners. It's the UN back on December the 22nd, 2008, finally realized that sickle cell anemia is a public health problem worldwide. Just by way of background, it is the most commonly inherited blood disorder in the U.S., and it occurs in many different nationalities, whether your ethnicity is African, Mediterranean, Indian, South American. So it's definitely present on multiple continents, hence the fact that the UN has made it World Sickle Cell Day, and that is June the 19th. So the first World Sickle Cell Day was held on June 19th, 2009, so we are celebrating the 4th anniversary. And when I say we, there are two organizations in town. There's an organization called Sickle Cell Fund for Families in Need. That is an organization where I am the board chair and currently the interim executive director. And the other organization is called Metropolitan Seattle Sickle Cell Task Force. And Ken West is the president there. And the two organizations, we serve different clients, if you will. Sickle Cell Fund works with low-income families who are struggling to make ends meet, who have children with the disease. And the Metropolitan Seattle group, they work more with support, group meetings, people who get together who have the disease and talk about the challenges that they face as adults, because these adults with the disease, if they get a lot of pain crises, have a really hard time coping, keeping down a job and so on, because they have to go into hospital on a regular basis. So it's a horrible disease. There's no universal cure. Yes, there's been some success with bone marrow and stem cell transplantation, but it has been very, very small number of patients who have been helped by that process. The vast majority of people who have the disease are not candidates for this process.
And a lot of it has to do, I'm sorry for interrupting, with the red blood cells.
Yes.
Maybe you could just kind of touch briefly, I know you're not a doctor, but just kind of touch briefly on exactly what happens with someone who has sickle cell.
Yes, and you're right, I am not a doctor, but our oxygen goes from our lungs to the rest of our body. The oxygen is carried by hemoglobin. Okay, when hemoglobin changes shape, the molecules stick together. And when these molecules stick together, they become distorted. Generally, a healthy red blood cell is donut-shaped, and when these molecules stick together, they become sickle-shaped, hence the name of the disease. And what that does is it causes blockage. And these are very, very painful. And you will find that small children with sickle cell disease are sometimes without their spleen, because the spleen works so very hard to try to pull out these bad, if you will, red blood cells out of the system, that it becomes overworked and shriveled and has to be removed. A child with sickle cell disease, an infection can kill them.
Oh, okay, so they're extremely vulnerable when to infection and other problems.
Yeah, very vulnerable to infection, yes. And that's one of the things, when mom gets a phone call from the school nurse saying that their child has a fever. I mean, that's life-threatening to a child with sickle cell disease, And so part of what we do is we try to educate the public on the size and the scope and the severity of the disease. Here in America, 1 out of every 500 African-American babies are born with the disease.
Well, and let me ask you this question. And you said educate the public about it. Is that challenging? I mean, are people kind of, unless they are directly affected by it, they're not that interested? Or is it always, is it pretty easy to get people kind of on board with this?
No, it's surprising. It's some folks don't even realize that it's still around. They don't realize how big it is. For example, there's more Americans suffering with sickle cell disease than there are Americans who are suffering with muscular dystrophy. Yet we feel that muscular dystrophy, there's more familiarity with that disease, perhaps, and they're both similar and they're both life-threatening. But it's just not that much has been talked about the disease. Folks think that it is limited to people of African descent, which is not true. It is a lot more widespread than that. And so it's just like, well, that doesn't really kind of touch me and affect me and so on. But it can and it does. In the school system it can, with employers it can, and it's just to help folks, to teach folks about why mom has to leave work right away because she's got a call from school that her child has a fever. That's serious. That's not to be taken lightly.
Right. So people will have an opportunity on June the 16th to learn more about the disease as well as raise funds.
Right. And it's not so much, we do a lot of health fairs, and we reach out and we do public speaking at service clubs, at churches, and so on. The June 16th is a celebration. A wonderful group, the Kalimba Band, is performing pro bono for us. They are an Earth, Wind, and Fire tribute band, so you can just imagine.
Oh, my goodness. I'm too young to remember.
Come on, Kevin, work
Earth,
with
Wind,
me
and
on
Fire.
this.
Even Elizabeth over here does it.
Yeah, I put on your boogie shoes, dear man. You'll be
I
on
was
the
in
dance
diapers
floor.
when that stuff was coming out.
Okay, I'll leave it alone. But it's going to be a dance. It's going to be a celebration, and a celebration because there is a lot of great work being done in research, both here at the Children's Hospital and by the Cancer Care Alliance, St. Jude's Research Hospital in Memphis. Our organization operates both in Seattle and in Memphis. So there's a lot for us to be thankful for. 20 years ago, the average lifespan was 25. Now it's up to 42. There's better drugs that are being prescribed, and so on. And then just the fact that it is recognized by the UN, we're very happy about that, and that gives us, we want to celebrate that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's wonderful. So, I mean, that is happening on June the 16th, right?
The 16th of June.
And where is it at again?
It's going to be at the Blodell Hall, which is
Blodell Hall.
Yeah, that's at St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral.
In Seattle.
In Seattle on 10th Avenue East.
Okay.
It's got a wonderful hall there.
And it says the tickets are $55.
Yes.
And it's heavy appetizers. Now, what is a heavy appetizer?
Heavy appetizers, that is comfort food. We're talking about sliders. We're talking about maybe deep-fried macaroni and cheese.
Ooh.
Have you ever had that? It's really good. I know it sounds
our producer
weird,
here, Michael
really
Robege, says that he eats this constantly, this kind of stuff. Daily.
So that's what we mean.
Deep-fried stuff.
Yeah.
All day long. Heavy appetizers, desserts, silent auction with a raffle, 2 airline tickets to Maui for 2.
Yes.
Well, I'm definitely going to enter that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, so I think we've covered that, and so I'm hoping that if people want more information, how would they find out more about that?
They can go to our website, which is www.scffn.org.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I want to do is I want to take a commercial break and come back to you, Joy, actually, and I want to talk about some of the workshops that you've been involved in. So just hold on while we take a little break here at the Urban Forum Northwest, 1150 AM KKNW.
You, Missy, are way too grumpy for your age.
People do call me names like Krabby McCrab, Not Enough Fiber, and Cranky Katie, which is kind of annoying since my name is Lauren.
Maybe it's because you are always cranky.
You're right. And it's usually after my drive to work. One time, I planted a jelly donut on someone's head for not making coffee.
Talk to the voice of reason.
Hello, precious. Ride Sound Transit and relax. It's a cleaner, greener way to go. Plus, you probably have fewer nicknames.
Or maybe I'd have names like Sparkles, Sweetie Pie Face, or Happy Go Lauren.
Keep chasing that dream, dear.
Listen to the voice of reason.
Smile, sweetie.
Ride Sound Transit and save. For details, visit soundtransit.org. Sound Transit. Ride the wave.
Listen to the voice of reason. Save time, money, and the environment by taking Sounder to select Mariners games. Visit soundtransit.org for details.
Small businesses help sustain our region's economy. That's why the Port of Seattle provides equal access and opportunity to all small businesses owned and operated by minorities, women, and the disabled. To provide professional or personal services or contract for small works projects, you should register on both the Port's Consultants roster and Small Works roster. You can also make Port buyers aware of your products and services by registering on the Small Business roster. It's free and easy. For more information, just go to portseattle.org and look for the links under Business. That's portseattle.org. The Port of Seattle, where a sustainable world is headed.
Good news, Belgium. We're streamed worldwide at 1150kknw.com. Alternative Talk, 1150 AM.
And welcome back to Urban Forum Northwest, brought to you by the Sound Transit's Diversity Program Office, the Port of Seattle Office of Social Responsibility, and the Washington State Chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors. This is Urban Forum Northwest on 1150 KKNWAM. I'm your host, Kevin Henry, sitting in for Eddie Rye. And on the line, we still have Joy Stevens from Ode to Joy Consulting. You still there, Joy?
I am, Kevin.
Okay, well, we talked about the sickle cell fundraiser, and we talked about the reason for putting the spotlight back on that particular disease. I wanted you to talk about some upcoming workshops. I noticed that you had sent me an email, and you talked about Twitter for Nonprofits Made Easy. What's that all about?
Well, that's right. You know, we agree. I think I heard you talk about this a little earlier on, that social media is something that we must embrace. And I include in that we, the nonprofit community. And there are some wonderful nonprofits in the city who are really doing wonderful work using social media to not only bring more attention to their cause, but to develop and create more donors and just more friends, more volunteers, more board members, and so on. Mm-hmm. And the smaller grassroots nonprofits may not have the same kind of advantage that the larger organizations have. They don't necessarily have somebody on board in their marketing department or in the communications department whose job it is to take care of the website and social media. So what we do is we help those folks by doing workshops that are relevant to them running their business. So we just recently finished Facebook for Nonprofits Made Easy on March the 29th. So this is a follow-up to it. And so we're doing Twitter for Nonprofits Made Easy on April the 24th.
Okay, now moving right along, I notice... I'm sorry, do you have more to say?
No, go on.
Okay. Moving right along to April the 30th, it says presentation skills for the faint of heart.
Yes. And here again, you know, Kevin, if you are going to run a nonprofit or you're going to or running a business, you have to be able to get out there, talk to the general public, do presentations, and be articulate and charming and entertaining to get the message out.
Just like you, Joy.
Oh, yeah. I try. And so here again, you know, folks, what's that joke, Kevin, that people say, I'd rather be the guy lying there in the coffin than the one doing the eulogy?
Yeah, no, I've heard that.
Have you heard that?
Yes,
okay.
I have.
Well, there are some people in our midst who are running nonprofits who maybe feel a little uncomfortable standing in front of a group of strangers and doing a presentation on their organization and then following that up with an ask, either an ask for sponsorship as, you know, you need sponsors to help defer some of the costs if you are putting on an event. You need board members to help you run the organization, and you need money to help you run the organization.
Yeah, money would help.
Yes, it certainly does. So what we do is we not only teach presentation skills, but we teach people how to be confident in front of a group of strangers and how to joyfully ask for money. And so that is on April the April the 30th. And
right, at the Mosaic Coffee House in Seattle.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Moving right along, May 23rd, what every board member should know about finances.
That's
what
right.
What should they know?
Well, that is part of our board development series. We've got 3 courses that we offer. It's what every board member should know about finances, what every board member should know about fundraising, and then the third in that series is roles and responsibilities of the not-for-profit board. Now, you know, basically a board member should at minimum know how to read financial statements. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the donors, and so they need to understand what is going on in the organization from a financial point of view. They need to be able to sustain that organization and make decisions that is going to be good for the future. And they need to make sure that the money that is coming into the organization is used for its mission, because that's why you and I give to particular nonprofits.
Now, on June the 7th, you have what every board member should know about fundraising.
Yes. Now, my philosophy and the philosophy of our firm is that fundraising begins with the board. If the board is not willing to give a financial gift, then how can they possibly ask donors to do so? So what we do is we help nonprofits understand the whole fundraising process, why it is important for them to give, and why creating a revenue for the organization is critical. Because, once again, without the money, there is no mission. It comes down to that. It's as simple and as basic as that.
Well, the thing that comes to mind, too, when I've talked to you before, is I've heard the term dysfunctional board before, and I've heard you even talk about how you've had to go in and, I guess, kind of try and fix what's broken and things like that. What are some of the things that people just need to really be aware of when they're recruiting board members? And I say that because, without mentioning any names, I remember I was recruiting for a particular board in the last year or so. And there was one person who I thought would be good, but then it became apparent in the first meeting that this person was going to be not complimentary to the rest of the people on the board. And as a result, it ended in a big kind of ugly situation. But in retrospect, I could see the warning signs. So are there certain warning signs or certain things people should think about when they're forming the board or when they're recruiting new members? Because there's a lot of turnover, every couple years or whatever. Then you have to go out and get new blood, so to speak. So what are some tips that you have?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is we're going to make the assumption that you either have a small board or you're just starting to form your board. One of the things that we do at our board retreats is a board diversity grid. So on the left-hand side, there's all the board members, and across the top are all the different skills and attributes that you want your board members to have. So we're looking at things like demographics. Do you have the different generations represented, i.e. you've got the millennial, the X, the Y, the baby boomer, the silent generation.
The silent generation?
Those are the folks who are before. The silent generation is the one before the baby boomers.
Okay.
Okay? So, and then before that, we've got the GIs. So anyhow, so there's your generation. So do you have a diverse board in terms of age, in terms of sex, and in terms of ethnicity? Okay, then you take a look at education. Do we have folks who have bring different disciplines, therefore different skill sets and different experiences to our board? Do we have somebody who likes to fundraise? Do we have somebody who is good at social media? Do we have somebody who is good at public relations? Do we have somebody who understands how to put together a good program? And so on and so forth. And then you take a look at connections. Do we have somebody who is well connected in the community, is a public figure in the community, or is connected to public figures in the community?
And Joy, I have to tell you, we have 1 minute left. I'm sorry.
All those good things, but you know what? I wanted to ask you, what was it about that individual that didn't work? Was it a personality issue?
It was the thing of that they had their own agenda. They had already decided where the board was going. But unfortunately, I want you to give out your website or any contact information you want to give out so people can contact you for more information about everythent you're doing.
Certainly. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. Sure. Workshop information can be found on the O2 Joy website, which is o2joyent.com. Or folks can Google me, Joy Stevens. Stevens is with a PH, and all of my LinkedIn and Facebooks and Twitter and web sites come up.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on Urban Forum Northwest on 1150 KKNW.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, take care.
Okay, will do.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And in the final minute, this is Kevin Henry saying that it's been an honor and a pleasure working with Michael Robege, my producer. And I wanted to mention one event happening on April 15th. Baby Girl Productions or Promotions presents Up Close and Personal with the Next Movement, April 15th, Sunday Night Grooves at the Tea Palace, 2828 Sunset Lane, Renton, Washington. If you want more information, Call 253-861-0176 or 253-221-7619. This is brought to you by Baby Girl Promotions. And Next Movement is one of those great groups, one of those soul groups from the 70s that I don't remember because I'm too young to remember that. So remember, this is Urban Forum Northwest on KKNW 1150 AM. I'm your host, Kevin Henry, saying drive carefully.